8 now on the Radio Wammo Breakfast. A show that's kicking off in Auckland this week is called Standstill, presented by the Rebel Alliance. 3 actors on 3 treadmills for 60 minutes. The director is Anders Falstie-Jensen, joining us in the Kiwi studio. Good morning, Anders.
Good morning.
Lovely to have you in. 3 actors on treadmills. Why?
Well, I just thought I premiered the show last year at the Fringe Festival, and when I did that was basically just came from a really loose idea that I just thought it could be really interesting to see 3 actors just getting increasingly tired and sweaty over an hour. And then I just thought I'd just write something for them.
Sounds like torture.
Yeah, well, I mean, they don't run the whole time. Sometimes they crawl, and sometimes they
from exhaustion?
Yeah, partly, but also just from sheer sort of fear of life or something like that. I'm still not quite sure, actually.
It sounds like fear of you, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But then, so they walk, they crawl, and then they run, and they do have an occasional sprint as well.
Okay, and I guess they're not just exercising, are they? They must be interacting.
Yeah. So they do heaps of talking to each other. So there's
what about?
Well, basically,
is there a story thread?
Yeah, there's 5 different story threads that all sort of interweave. That they're not sort of directly linked, but sort of thematically they all come together as a whole. I hope, But I'm biased because I wrote it, and it makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for instance, there's one story which is like a lot of the stories are inspired by true stories. So that, for instance, there's one story about a bike rider called Colin the Cambridge Cannonball, who's a world champion cyclist, and he's based on a real bike rider called Bjarne Riis, who was a Danish champion who won the Tour de France in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
And when he came back to Denmark afterwards, he was just this big national hero that they drove him through Copenhagen in an open limo, and thousands of people came out and cheered, and it was just incredible, and he was just on all the magazines. And then he just had this amazing fall from grace, because the year after he went to the Olympics, then he lost. Then he had an affair with this really hot handball player, so he just left his wife and his 2 kids.
Crikey.
And then subsequently, just to kind of hammer it all in, he did an interview, and someone asked him, "So, have you ever taken drugs?" And he said, "I've never tested positive." And from after saying that, the whole country just completely turned against him.
I didn't inhale.
I didn't inhale, yeah. And people kept asking him, "So what's with that weird wording? I've never tested positive." So is that a yes or no? And said, I've just answered the question.
Yeah.
Great.
So he'd make a good politician.
Yeah, he'd be like a great politician. And then so there's that story. Then there's a story about some factory workers, and there's a story about a peculiar encounter between a hairdresser and a doctor that happened to my brother, and another story about a motivational speaker who gets sick, and then there's intercut with these little vignettes of cowboys and stuff like that.
Huh.
Yeah.
And do they are they effectively meeting in a gym or something?
No, there's actually no gym at all.
Okay.
It's just what I really like is it's just really interesting to watch people walk and talk, because that's what we do most of the time anyway. Yeah. So they just walk or they run while they talk, and it's just incredibly fascinating to look at. It's just quite hypnotic in a way, which I really like.
Sounds like an OK Go video.
But OK Go just kind of push it out after 4 minutes. We push it to an hour.
Yeah, push it to the limit.
Yeah, we push it to the limit.
How tired are these actors at the end of it all?
Well, they get pretty tired because, which actually, from my sadistic directorial point of view, I quite like, because then they reach a point where it becomes a bit fluent, sort of, where it's not quite clear whether it's the character that's tired or the actor that's tired, and I quite like that. But they get quite exhausted, because it's a lot to. It sounds really simple. You just walk and talk, but there's a lot more to it than that, and they change pace all the time, and they have to turn the treadmill, so sometimes they're straight on, sometimes they're side on.
So I'd imagine it's mental and physical agility.
Yeah, and also because they jump between all these storylines that aren't sort of any sort of logical. It's tricky for them to find sort of a thread through it.
Yeah.
And then also sometimes they fall off because they're running and have to turn, and it's tricky stuff.
And are they provided with water and towels and stuff?
No, they just have to hydrate before the show.
Okay.
And then they have they've got 1 hour, but they can live without water. But that's all right.
Yeah. And so it was quite popular at the Fringe?
Yeah. I originally, when I did it, I'd only really thought I'd do it as part of the Fringe, as a sort of 5-night show.
Yeah. But
then it just went really well, and I was quite surprised with. It just seemed to hit a nerve for some reason, so we did sort of a one-night return to Tapak a month later, and that sold out. And I thought, I really like the show. I think I'll just do it again. So this year we've got the chance to do it at Q in Auckland. We've got a small tour, so 2 weeks in Auckland and a week in Wellington and 3 nights in Hamilton.
Cool.
At the Meteor. Yeah.
And people can get tickets how?
Well, they can go for the Auckland season, they can go to qtheatre.co.nz.
Yep.
In Wellington, they can go to the BATS website, bats.co.nz. And for Hamilton, they can go to ticketek.com.
Nice.
Yeah.
And it sounds really great. People should get along to this. When does it kick off?
We kick off on Wednesday here in Auckland, and then in Wellington on the 14th of June, and then we wrap up in Hamilton on the 5th of July.
Nice. All right, go and check out some great local theatre. Thank you very much, Anders.
You're welcome.
Time now here on Kiwi is 24 minutes past 8. Excuse me.